type of video that I'm calling Crafting Comebacks. In this series, I'm dusting off the past and revisiting some of my abandoned creations. Today, I'm very excited to share with you a long overdue project that holds a special place in my heart. About a year or so ago, I decided I wanted to make a realistic replica of the fossils from Animal Crossing, in a similar style to my realistic Pokemon Dome and Helix fossils. Unfortunately, life got in the way and I didn't get too far before I got sidetracked and never came back to the project. I pretty much only got as far as sculpting and casting the little fossil pieces I needed to embed in the clay before it got buried under other unfinished projects. But today, we're gonna fix that. So let's get started! Let me show you what I'm working with. I started by printing out a picture of the fossil the size I wanted it to be. I also printed out the fossil details to scale as well. This helped me sculpt everything in the correct proportions out of polymer clay. From there, I just made some quick molds and then cast some hard copies out of leftover urethane resin. I'm going to use polymer clay again because I have a lot of it sitting in the bottom of a drawer, getting old, and I won't feel bad when I ruin it later. I also know that it won't hinder the cure of my silicone. I've run into problems with other clays. I'm starting with just a printout of the fossil so I can make sure I get the scale right. I'm also going to try and waste as little clay as possible, so I'm starting by balling up a big wad of aluminum foil to go in the middle of the rock that I'm about to sculpt. This clay is pretty old and crumbly, so I'm going to need a bit of clay softener into it to see if I can get it back to a workable consistency. Now that it's nice and soft, I'm just going to get the basic shape by smooshing it down around the aluminum foil. I'm using the paper printout as a guide as I try to form it into the rough shape of the fossil. It's important for me to know where the spiral shell will be for the next step, so I'm pressing it into the clay to get an impression, and then digging the extra clay out so it sits deeper in and looks embedded into the stone. Once I've tested the fit and I'm happy with it, I'm going to put the clay into the freezer. I'll let it sit in there for about an hour and get really hard. This makes it easier for me to slice sharp edges into the clay using a razor. I couldn't find a regular razor, so I'm just using this box cutter blade. I'm trying to get clean, sharp facets that look like what you see in the picture. I need them to be as pronounced as possible because they're going to lose detail in a step later on. Now that I'm happy with the way the sculpt is looking, I can press the spiral shell back into place and then use a metal tool to press extra clay into the gaps to seal them up. If you like creative videos like this one, consider subscribing. I share tutorials, art process videos, and vlogs, and I'd love to have you as part of my community. For the two smaller shells, I'm repeating what I did for the spiral shell, pressing them into the clay and then hollowing out the impressions so they embed deeper, and then smoothing the gaps with a metal tool. Next, it's time to get the sand texture. I do that by, you guessed it, using sand. At first I tried pressing some craft sand into the clay with my fingers, but I wasn't a fan of how coarse the sand was, and it wasn't sticking to the dry clay very well. So I'm switching to some finer sand that I collected from a beach, and I'm using some rubbing alcohol to moisten the clay. The sand seems to stick better, and I'm able to spread and press it on with a cheap paintbrush. I had this idea to add some cute star details to the fossil. I'm going to glue some star-shaped glitter randomly around it. I think they won't be super noticeable, but we'll know they're there, and it'll be a fun little detail when you look at it closer. Now it's ready for molding! I'm just going to use my go-to method of hot gluing a cup down to create a simple mold. The top of the cup is wider and fits around it better, so I'm going to use that and then just cut off the bottom of the cup. I need to make sure that the hot glue seals the edge all the way around because silicone likes to find the teeniest hole and seep out. It's time to figure out how much silicone I need. Usually I just pour some rice into the mold and measure that, but I don't want the rice sticking to the clay and ruining the mold, so I'm just gonna guess. I think I used about 100 mils to make the blobby mold, and it looks about half the size of this one, so I'm just gonna double that number and hope I get it about right. When you're mixing silicone, you have to keep stirring and scraping the sides until the whole thing is one uniform color. You don't want any white left anywhere. This type of silicone is decent at self-degassing, but I never take any chances and I put the silicone in a vacuum chamber and suck all of the air out of it. I also cure my molds in a pressure pot since I cast it in a pressure pot. Both steps help ensure I don't have any bubbles or flaws in my mold. It's been 4 hours and my silicone is now cured, so let's clean the mold out. There there's a lot of sand and things left in the mold, so I'm going to give it a bit of a scrub and let it completely dry out off screen. Be right back. Okay, so it has had plenty of time to dry out. I don't want any moisture in the mold before I cast. I got most of the sand out, but there is still some trapped in there. So I'm going to do a cleaning cast, which will be just a simple white cast with urethane resin that should clean the rest of the gunk out. Don't mind the cloudy starting color of this resin, it's because it's old. It'll serve its purpose though. It also won't matter because it'll cure white anyway. See? White! This first casting will make a good master when I want to make more molds later. Now it's time to make our final casting. I think I want the white shell parts of the fossil to be a little bit iridescent, so I'm going to use this pearl powder. I'm just using this sponge applicator to rub some of the powder into the parts of the mold that will be raised. My plan is to pour the white parts first, let them cure, and then pour the purple part. But I've been trying to figure out how to do the smaller shells without having the resin run down the sides of the mold. I'm thinking maybe propping it up at an angle and hope the liquid tension keeps the resin in place while it cures? Yeah, I think this might work if I use a pipette like this. Sorry, the camera died, but I did get it to work after a few tries. The next step is filling the large shell with white curing polyurethane resin and letting it cure. The resin is cured! And also I decided to rub some purple mica powder into some of the larger stars on the stone part. I think it'll make them easier to see. Now here's where the magic happens and we get this fossil to look like a purple rock. This powder, when mixed into translucent resin, will cause the casting to look like stone. This stuff is pricey, so I don't want to waste any. So I'm pouring the powder into the mold and filling it, so I only use the amount I need. I'll just dump it out of the mold and use this amount. According to the instructions, you need to mix this 1 part A, 1 part B, and 2 parts of the quarry tone. So I measured the powder and figured out the amount of resin I will need. We start by mixing part B of the resin to the stone powder. Then I add purple dye to part A of the resin and mix the color in, before adding it to part B and the stone mixture. I need to make sure this is well mixed and the sides and bottom of the container are scraped. If it's not all mixed properly, it won't cure right. Then all I need to do is pour the mixture into the mold and place it into the pressure pot for an hour to cure. It's cured! Are you ready to see the final product? Let's pop it out of the mold. But wait, something doesn't feel right. Let's do this properly. What do you think? Will Blathers identify this for me? If I want to make more of these in the future, I will need to modify the mold so it can sit on its side. That would require new materials though, and that can be expensive. So if this is a project you'd like to contribute to, hop on over to my Ko-fi page and consider donating $1 or $2. You can donate a flat amount or join my monthly memberships. Monthly members get access to the new Discord server I set up and previews of my new art and projects. Thanks for watching. See you next time.